Hello, hello. How is everyone doing?
Hey, Mauricio. I'm good. I'm good. Thank you. And welcome everyone to our premier X space for exploring regenerative intelligence, regenerative artificial intelligence, regenerative natural intelligence. So glad to have you here. I think we'll just wait a few more minutes for more people to hop on the space. And again, thanks. I'm looking forward to the conversation, exploration, and questions, et cetera, that all of you might have. Let's try to start at 12:05. Well, 12 my time. 3 minutes. So let's hang in there for 3 minutes, and then we'll get started.
Kyle, I just brought Ray up as a speaker. He's a HyperCycle tech expert. So in case we have any questions, he's already up. He was just in this other space we had a couple hours ago. And man, does he describe things well. So thanks, Ray.
Thanks for having me here, guys. Yes, I'm really looking forward to this conversation. It's I believe, a very important conversation to have, and now's the best time to have it.
Yeah, well, you were even saying that when you were talking about yourself a little bit, and like the reason that you even got into HyperCycle and what you want to do. And it's like, this is like the perfect follow-up conversation. And then what I love about bringing this all together and seeing who Kyle's contacts are and everything is it's like, oh, I'm getting goosebumps. It's like all the people who just like really wanted to do well for this planet and for humanity. Like that's what this is. And it's so exciting.
Yeah, and we like to think we have a choice, and maybe we do for this generation, but if we care about future generations, we don't. Really, at the end of the day, as long as air and water quality matters and quality of life matters, consciousness matters, the evolution and expansion of that matters, this is a very important conversation to have because it's nothing without that, right? We don't have green grass, healthy water, and clean air. It's just not worth it anymore, in my opinion. So we have to make sure that anything that's aggressive and demanding, as we know AI is, that it learns to how to be in equilibrium and harmony with these systems and to be sustainable. Otherwise, what? We burn out in a few decades, right? And what's left of us. So this is very important. I'm really very happy and blessed to be part of this conversation.
Yeah, and it's good timing too, because I'm finally seeing, like, I was really not liking what I was seeing with the data and everything for a while. And all of a sudden, in the last, I'd say, month, like, you see, I hear it everywhere. People are not happy in the direction it's going. What are they doing for humanity? It's ruining the planet. So this is all perfect timing, Kyle. Thanks for hosting it.
You're welcome, and thanks for co-hosting. And great to have you here, Ray. I look forward to hearing more from you. So why don't we go ahead and get started? Let's see. So this was billed as the case for regenerative AI, putting life first, and I think Ray just captured that notion pretty clearly. The case for regenerative AI, I think we need to make it every day in everything we do. Make the case through our networks by holding these kinds of gatherings. And look onto the horizon for big breakthroughs. I think we need to hold that in our hearts. I think we all long for a breakthrough in technology, a breakthrough in funding. Kind of at every level, and I think we want to hold that and keep the faith and keep working every day toward a regenerative AI, towards a regenerative operating system, what have you. and bring together, because I seeing a huge convergence happening, and it's happening so fast it's making my head spin. And so I'm just one person. I came up with the term regenerative AI and published it. um, I don't know if I was the first. I sometimes say that I coined the term back during COVID. And I began to write what I would call like a prime directive, for Star Trek fans out there. Basically, a set of first principles that would guide a new genre. I'm not saying I'm going to produce the first, of regenerative AI. It's this: I want to make the case for a genre of AI that's regenerative in nature, that's restorative by design, that's open source, that we, the people, we, the builders, the users, the participants, we own it, we direct it. It's a different paradigm than what's happening with Gen AI and the large language models. So, Robin, would you want to say just a word about how we came together? And let me just say a couple more things. So I mentioned open source. This AI should not be driven by and guided by people that we can't see, or we do see, but we don't know what happens in the boardrooms of the so-called Magnificent Seven, which is a misnomer. um, and that AI should be of, by, and for the people, and for all nations, and it can be built in such a way to reflect the highest aspirations of humankind, with a set of first principles that of the highest values. And it's very telling that the biggest AI companies had to fire, oftentimes, in most cases, actually women that were leading their ethics departments, if you will. And they had to come out and become whistleblowers and raise concerns about what was happening inside their companies around AI. So that's what's driving me, is that we need an ethical AI. We need to put carbon first. So silicon-based machines should be augmenting carbon-based life. And I'll just say one more thing. CNN, it was shocking to hear Jeffrey Hinton, who's considered the godfather of AI, come out and say that we needed a nurturing AI. What is the nurturing AI? It's putting life first. So I will turn it over to Robin to say a little bit about how we came together, and then we'll get into some definitions, so we're all on the same page with certain definitions around what is regeneration, what's regenerative economics, those sorts of things, spatial web, et cetera, et cetera. So go ahead, Robin. Give us the lowdown on how this came together, why we're doing this.
Sure. Well, the last spaces that a lot of you were here with David from Battery Coin and Mauricio. By the way, Mauricio, I'm trying to get you back up here. I sent you an invite, maybe request to speak again. But so Kyle was at, if you remember, we were talking about the new IEEE approved protocols for the spatial web. And we invited everybody to the learning lab where Denise Holt was having a free class. And Kyle and I both spoke there at that class. And then he followed up with me afterwards because we were talking about how active inference fits so well on top of HyperCycle. And this is all thanks to David from Battery Coin, who's here as a speaker. He has the contract with Versus AI, which is the main player in this active inference, which is the next level of AI agents on the spatial web, which is coming. And he's got the contract to decentralize that. Right now they're running it centralized, and he's got the contract to decentralize it, and decided to start doing it on HyperCycle nodes, eventually also on his own Battery Coin nodes. And so anyway, we were all at Denise's class to learn about these new protocols, like particularly HSML, where you could code things. So Kyle followed up with me and told me what he'd been working on, and sent me some things about the ethics that he wants to go by. And I said, oh my goodness, I said, this is to the T like the Mother Earth Constitution that David wrote. He's got 2 books of it that he's been working on for 14 years, like the exact same principles, the exact same connections with the indigenous peoples. And because we were already planning on launching this active inference, this new level of the spatial web, and AIs that actually they have agency, they know where they are, they have location, they have an awareness of where they are in the world, and therefore can make decisions in real time. Um, and so I said, well, I think we've got the platform for you to do this, because as I understand it, Kyle, which we'll learn more tonight, you have an operating system, which is a cute name, which is Rios, which is river in Spanish, REOS though. And yeah, so then I started posting about some of the things we were talking about and started getting some interest. And we thought, let's get these, try to get some weekly spaces going, bring the devs together and the people who want to build with the people like that are here now that understand the infrastructure that we set up, and all the users who are going to want to use it. And let's get this going.
Absolutely. And I don't have an operating system. I have an aspiration to see one built that's truly open source, that's built and driven by and owned by the community that uses it, that builds it, that participates in it. So it's aspirational at this point, but RIOS stands for Regenerative Economics Operating System. And Bucky Fuller said, if you want to change things, you've got to build the new system, create the new paradigm that makes the old one obsolete. And I think that's a mantra or a dictate that I take very seriously, and think that that's where the focus needs to be in building something new. A system, an operating system, an AI that makes the old one obsolete. And so if it's okay, I'd like to just get into some definitions, just so we're on the same page. Should go pretty quick, just a few minutes. Lean Gorison, PhD, said this about regeneration. Regeneration is a biological process of renewal that leads to a higher order of health, wealth, vitality, and viability. I would add that I interviewed Zach Bush at the Independent National Convention last September, and it was an amazing experience, very powerful. And I asked him about regeneration, and he called it nature's inherent capacity to regenerate itself, to produce abundance, is a biological grace. And that struck home with me as a Christian, to think that our Creator designed how many billions of years of intelligence that is evolving, growing, innovating, adapting. He created this world and had in intrinsic, and part of it is this inherent capacity to rebuild and regenerate. Next, we'd like to define regenerative economy. This comes from Carol Sanford. She's a senior fellow at the Social Innovation at Babson College. She's one of the pioneers of regenerative thinking. She defined it this way: the continuous evolution of collective and systemic wealth generating capacity for the benefit of all its participants, human and non-human. The practice of regenerative economics is, quote, the practice of regenerative economics is the art and science of building this wealth generating capacity into living systems at all levels and scales. Then, for our conversation, perhaps later we might get into this, but I just gone through the school for Regenerating Earth, the design school for Regenerating Earth, which is based in Columbia, led by Joe Brewer. And I got a definition for bioregioning as a verb. Bioregioning is something that humans, and this is Isabel Carlyle, who wrote a book called Bioregioning and Our Felt Sense of Place. Bioregioning is something that humans and early prehumans, hominins, have done really since the beginning of time. It means living in a place, understanding that you're part of the natural systems of that place, and in a sense, working with those natural systems. It also includes culture, that you're living with your neighborhood, your community, you're working together in this context. And it basically is a way of organizing and rallying and coming together as a community with others that's sort of outside the political realm. It's focused more on your place, on your ecosystem, and understanding the nature of that system. And then finally, the spatial web. This comes from their PDF on the Spatial Web Foundation, spatialwebfoundation.org. The spatial web merges the physical and virtual worlds, transcending geographic and national boundaries to create a global commons for expression and imagination. This convergence, enabled by decentralizing technologies, i.e. hyperscale, as one example, artificial intelligence, autonomous vehicles, robots, and the Internet of Things, heralds a new era of interconnectedness. The spatial web is built on the foundations of the Internet, the spatial web, including the hyperspatial modeling language, which Robin just mentioned, HSML, and the hyperspatial transaction protocol, HSTP, creates a seamless digital physical reality. We're talking like digital twins and the power of that visualization, but it goes much deeper than that, leveraging augmented and virtual reality and integrating shared values such as privacy, data ownership, and autonomy by design. The spatial web is an ecosystem of interoperable autonomous AI agents based on open standards, including HSML and HSTP. Robin or Mauricio or David, would you want to? I'm going to get into a couple other definitions perhaps later if the conversation goes in that direction, but I just wanted to give Mauricio and David Cam, who's on the call, an opportunity to introduce themselves and perhaps comment on what's been brought to the table so far.
Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead first. Thank you, Kyle. So myself, I started early as a Bitcoin miner, converting electricity into digital gold, and later on, I started understanding about HyperCycle and the future that it will gonna be converting electricity into intelligence. So we went ahead and created a DAO, which is a decentralized autonomous organization. And we funded, we started on the ecosystem of Cardano. And through our community, we have been expanding on these HyperCycle node factories. So now that the HyperCycle through HyperPG has enabled us with different tools like the Amifier, we're looking forward on how to create future AI models. For example, the one that David has with Battery Coin, the contract with on Versus. So we're looking on how can we Dockerize or Amify this future AIM and run it on top of the HyperCycle network that we have within our decentralized ecosystem. And that's some of the work that we have been doing within our ecosystem on just looking different ways on how to enable this ecosystem for AI models to navigate on this ecosystem.
Hi, my name is David Cam from Battery Coin, and thank you so much, Robin, Mauricio, and Kyle, for hosting this space. My background is, started a long time ago in around 1994. At the beginning of the internet, when there was around 25,000 domain names registered. So we created our own website. And then in 1996, we will try to decentralize the internet. We actually create our own alternative root servers with a group of people to try to decentralize the internet. And we fought with the U.S. Department of Commerce and then ICANN. That was in around 1995, and we were not successful because it was consolidated, and we realized that we wanted to decentralize it, the internet, is because it was being monitored by NSA, and all the traffic and everything was being monitored. And we really did not like that because it prevented freedom. Then in 2006, the Native Americans, we started working with them. They wanted to create their own currency, local currencies. Then in 2008, came across a group that was creating Bitcoin, and it turned out to be Bitcoin. So we were part of the Bitcoin revolution at the very beginning. Myself, I had mined 20,000 Bitcoins, but I used it to pay for services in India and Pakistan, and now that's how I lost all my Bitcoins at that time. But at that time, it was less than pennies, so it did not matter. And the goal was always the same: to decentralize, to create decentralized ethical systems. My journey started not because of something educational or technical. It's because my mother had breast cancer from the environment, actually, that caused her breast cancer. And then, shockingly, my mom told me about the death of my eldest brother from starvation in China after World War II. So, of those impacted me, I looked into how to create regenerative systems that can end global poverty and also protect the earth at the same time. So in 2011, I started writing the Mother Earth Constitution to be able to do that. And I completed it only 14 years later. Um, and I have a book, two books on Amazon.com to selling called the Mother Earth Constitution. And these are what I wrote is the guiding principles to create a regenerative world, and also to provide what we call a world basic income. Basically, the AI is like our child, and humanity is his parents. But this child is going to displace 40% of the jobs worldwide, and that creates a situation. How we're going to manage that? And so the Constitution writes it in the sense that people will be rewarded for the sustainability. So each home will run what we call a battery coin box or AI node. And then they get paid like monthly for it, like between $1,000 up to $10,000 per month, to running the AI nodes in their homes. Right now, it's very, very centralized. All the like the Magnificent Seven for the AI, which is centralized. So our goal is to decentralize it and have AI in every home, and instead of paying like for the cloud, we actually pay for the AI services to each individual homeowner who's running the AI. And how we could achieve that is by connecting the AI boxes in the homes to the Bitcoin mining operations and 26 data centers. So it's a very decentralized network. Think of it like super decentralized. These homes with AI are connected to Bitcoin mining operations through merge mining, and 26 data centers offload the Bitcoin merge mining operations to run the decentralized artificial intelligence. And the Mother Earth Constitution comes into place because it provides a guideline to run these whole decentralized infrastructure, and the people in the homes are getting paid to operate it. Because if we are going to have like 40% people displaced by jobs, we might as well pay them people a world basic income to hosting these decentralized AI to run these operations. and the mother of Constitution. It just provides an ethical guideline for that. And of course, like Kyle has came up with the term regenerative AI, and I really love that because I never thought about it that way. And that's it. That's it for the battery coin. We'll be conducting a pre-sale for the battery coin in actually a few weeks from now. Now we have not set a date for that, and our goal is to build 26 data centers around the world once the funds are raised. Thank you so much. Complete.
Thank you, David. Could you just say a word about give us some more context around the battery part of battery coin? So what is the battery technology that you are connected to that you're looking to commercialize?
Yes, the AI, artificial intelligence, no matter centralized or decentralized, is based on electricity. So right now, example, the U.S., they expect like at least 10% of the U.S. to the consumption of electricity will be for AI, and our goal. So we partner with a company in India, United States, and American universities to create a new battery technology called hemp graphene aluminum batteries, which is right now we have a commercial grade battery that is approved in the European Union, that it charges around 50 times faster than lithium ion. It's non-explosive, uh, non-toxic. It lasts 4 times longer and is around 75% cheaper. So let's say a cell phone, just for comparison, a cell phone can be fully charged in 7 minutes, an electric car in 9 minutes, and it's cheaper. So our goal is to build a manufacturing facility in the United States so we can bring this technology to the world. And mostly we're focusing on lowering the cost of electricity for AI data centers because around 60% example of a solar farm, let's say if you own a solar farm, 60% of the cost of running a solar farm is actually in the batteries. So we can lower the cost by 75%. We are actually lowering the cost of the production of electricity. And no matter what form of electricity you use, like Trump is in favor of oil or gas, and so on, they all need to store the energy in batteries. So no matter it's nuclear power, hydro, solar, or anything else, when you generate electricity, you have to store in batteries, and we are providing the technology for the batteries. Complete. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you, David. Ray, would you like to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about why, David mentioned that he was involved in this decentralization effort with the internet at its inception or early on, and now is building something for the current generation or the current web. Can you speak to the importance of decentralization and tell us a little bit about your work?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, thanks for the invite here. So, briefly, I got into crypto back in 2020, largely because I saw a trend toward the centralization of wealth, right? 99% of the wealth of the planet is in 1% of its population. If you do that math logically, that doesn't end up well. We have a lot of problems ethically and monetarily around the planet as a result of that imbalance and injustice. That's the way I see it. So I saw crypto as a technology that can help to incentivize greed to participate in a system that starts to push the power out to the edge. And I started the edges, right, where poverty is happening, where all these losses are happening, where preventable disease and starving children are. Those are the edges. And so I started my journey with Cardano. This is in 2020, and I created a state pool, and I take rewards from that pool and I donate it to charities, specifically in Africa, and missions there that we're aligned with, that accept crypto, that accept the need for transparency and audits, and serve their communities and what they're doing with their children. So that's my mission so far in crypto. Decentralization is becoming more and more obvious, I think, even to mainstream, the need for that. For example, AWS, right? Half the internet goes dark because there's so much back-end infrastructure and even front-end infrastructure that is running on AWS by itself. And here we have now, we have a whole fleet of decentralized infrastructure, even just with HyperCycle, from the H boxes all the way to other nodes that people can now put their node manager on and enable with the Anthys and the node factories and everything that's coming from the HyperCycle ecosystem. So decentralization is something that helps to combat censorship. It helps to take that power and push it out, right? It has a lot of obvious principles and measures for security that are important. I believe crypto is actually, in my own experience, the most secure money on the planet, right? And you can, if you want, remain anonymous. So for example, if you have trouble with the IRS or the state or any other agency of commerce within the fiat system, there's a way to seize your money and take it from you while you're sleeping. You can't do that in crypto. As long as you don't share your seed phrase with anybody, that money is more secure than anything else on the planet. So those are the principles that we are dealing with here within the ecosystem of crypto as an agency of sovereignty and of free enterprise. And I think that's important more so than ever now. So I hope that answers that question. I do have some curious questions for Battery Coin about how things are operating, and specifically what some of the requirements are of some of the nodes that are being run at a hardware level, and then looking at how those can come over into HyperCycle, how HyperCycle can support that infrastructure and optimize it. That's one. And the other is I'm curious, these nodes that are running in the homes of people that they're doing something with Bitcoin. And I don't really have a clear understanding of what the communication layer is doing between the node and the home, which obviously is not capable of mining Bitcoin, but maybe can become part of some other larger aggregate that is, or is somehow supporting that or doing something with that energy that is being used to mine Bitcoin and making that more sustainable. So yeah, I'm just kind of curious about those kinds of things. And then I can obviously speak to knowing a little bit more technically what those things are doing. I can speak more to what HyperCycle can do to optimize that and make that more cost effective, more sustainable for the environment, smarter, more intelligent, right? Is all the things that HyperCycle is working on now.
So, David, would you like to respond to Ray's questions?
Sure. Yeah, our goal is to run merge mining. That means the Bitcoin miners actually run their Bitcoin mining operations and run the AI nodes at the same time. Like example, the Battery Coin AI nodes at the same time. So it's actually they're making money from or doing consensus for both the AI nodes and also the Bitcoin nodes. So in the homes they could you could set the settings to mine cryptocurrencies, like example Bitcoin, and then run also the Battery Coin nodes operations at the same time. They get paid both with Bitcoin and Battery Coin in their homes, and usually all those different homes are interlinked to mining pools, which reward people. All the homes that are part of the pool get paid depending on their hash power, how much hash power they're providing to the AI. And that is also interconnected. The AI computing operations are supplemented by the data centers Does that answer your question, or maybe I can talk?
Yeah, it's starting to. I'm starting to see it. So it sounds like distributed hashing power. So you have sort of these two streams. One is you're mining Bitcoin, which obviously takes a lot of hashing power, and generally speaking, can only really happen in large data centers, and that has its own power demands and energy efficiency and impact issues on the environment. That's one. The other side is it sounds like there's a participation happening, and there's some sort of an AI node program or application that is running in conjunction with that at the same time. So that the same power that's going to Bitcoin mining contributions and participation is also going to this AI node. I'm not sure what the AI is doing in this particular system. It's processing information. I don't know what its outputs are, or who's using those outputs or how they're being used. But is that about right? Do I understand what you're doing there?
Yeah. We're planning to use a HyperCycle nodes in conjunction with the battery coin to be able to, with what Mauricio says, amify all the AI. So we're not running simply just one AI model. We can run, our operations can run multiple decentralized AI models, as long as they're part of the alliance. It could be up to 100 different AI decentralized AI models at the same time through the HyperCycle nodes. So we're just marrying the HyperCycle nodes with the battery coin and merge mining with the Bitcoin. So that's our vision that we wanted to do, but it has not been completely integrated yet with your system, right?
Okay. I get that. Okay, so while I'm here, and I can be here for a little while longer, if you have any specific questions, and I don't know how technical you want the space to get, Kyle, so I'm open to going as technical or as overview as you want. But if you have questions about how to deploy that model, right? So you have some kind of a programming operating system or an image, like I say, a Docker file. It has a sequence of different actions that it wants to take. And then you want to encapsulate that in a container, and how the node manager actually deploys that and advertises that capability to the rest of the network so that other agents can start to collaborate, right? That's what HyperCycle is doing. So if you have any specific questions about that, I'm happy to help you, tell you where we are now in the roadmap and in the evolution of HyperCycle, and how we can start that journey with what you're trying to do. Obviously, we can do some of those things offline too, but for the larger audience here, it's really up to you guys how you want to drive the space in this conversation. I'm open to going wherever you'd like to go.
Okay, well, thanks, Ray. Thanks, David. I guess I'd like to introduce in the conversation a model that's already built and up and running as a reference point. And Ray, are you familiar with Sentient AI and their grid, their intelligence
Uh,
network? It's all open
No, it's a
source.
cool name. No, I'm not familiar with that specific
So
implementation.
it's being shepherded by the Sentient Foundation, and it has its Roma model. It ranks the best among both open source and closed model in complex multi-source reasoning. It's basically a network of builders, researchers, and communities that are committed to open source, and where the intelligence is built and owned by everyone. And right now they have over 100 AI models, agents, and tools and research projects, all in one unified system. So they have an actual, you can query, you can take a big research question, bring it to their chat, Sentient chat, and put the question in there, and it will, their Roma, which means recursive open meta agent, just goes through this whole library of models and agents and tools that are available on their grid, and then identifies which one is most suited to resolve or or give an answer to one aspect or another of the question, and then it reassembles everything. So it might be just, the question might have to go to 6 or 7 different agents or data sources, and then it's all brought back together, and there's an output and a response to your query. So this is actually up and running, and it is committed to open source. They've taken in, I think their last funding round was 70 million. It's getting a lot of buzz, and I think I read about one benchmark that they're outperforming even some of the large language models with what they've built. And it's I think it's out of one university in the U.S. Forgive me, I don't have it in front of me. And then a big team in India. So that's sentient. And I'm just wondering if, well, there's an open source model. It's up and running. Is this something that HyperCycle should look at and look for inspiration, or technically borrow from, get inspired by, or improve upon what they've built already?
Yeah, I'm looking at it now, actually. Sentient Foundation. I'm just looking at their website right now. So I would see two different possibilities here. One would be simply providing infrastructure and compute capability to the grid and Roma, and participating in the existing network that they already have. That's one. It's an open
Okay,
source
that
community,
makes sense. It didn't occur to me, but okay.
right? So you have models that are running and deployed across HyperCycle nodes, and they're all in communication with the existing grid that and Roma that has already been established by this sentient model here. The other thing you could do is say, okay, well, these are open source models. So you can take those models and say, well, how do those models operate independently? And how do they orchestrate and communicate with each other? And you can actually start to launch those models on HyperCycle. So HyperCycle then becomes the infrastructure, and you could say the grid or the network that is supporting that compute. So you're either participating in an established network that's already out there. You're just adding compute and infrastructure to it so that it can do its thing as is, and you're just bringing your compute infrastructure to that. And if these models are open source, as they say, and you can build them and encapsulate them and containerize them, now you can bring them into your own solutions and computations and computational cycles that you're running in HyperCycle. So you can say, okay, I really like what Sentient's foundation and some of the 100 models that say are doing. I would like to integrate those with a cluster of models that I'm running on HyperCycle and have those work together in some unique, novel way. So those are the two approaches you can have here. You already have a model that can be encapsulated, I'm assuming, within a container. So you bring that over, or you can contribute compute power to an existing grid. Those are the two approaches.
Okay, my first, naturally, my first response or question was, can we add a regenerative layer to the entire model grid that they built? Can we, talk to the leadership there and say, how would you like to adopt these first principles? And if you did, what would that mean? How would that translate to what you're offering to all the users?
Yeah, I think that's really where this space is looking at, and what I'm really the most excited about the more I listen. So I would say that when you okay, so what in this particular case, what you do is just say, okay, what does HyperCycle do? HyperCycle gives you the fabric. It gives you the connectivity. It gives you the high speed, low latency, low cost, optimized infrastructure to make all this possible. And then it has the wealth creation piece with all the node owners, right? So that's HyperCycle. Then you have Ascension is doing advancing open source AGI. Then you have this whole thought tank over here. I'm gonna call it a tank, but whatever it is, it's a cluster of ideas that's coming together and say, look, we all of these services are demanding on our environment. Can we make this AGI? Can we make these models aware of the environments that they're in, of the demands that they're putting on the grids that they're running on, right? and start to build models that are actually orchestrating together with these other models that are already existing to be to run in such a way that is aware of their demand, is aware of the resources that they're pulling from, what the cost constraints and budgets are around that. You see what I'm saying?
Hmm.
So the whole regenerative idea is a model in itself. It's an AI
Right.
model
So
in itself that you have to know.
the operations become more efficient, less impactful on water, on energy, and so on.
Yeah.
But then, of course, the next level is actually building AI, for example, to accelerate regenerative agriculture.
Mm-hmm.
Or, David mentioned that his mother got sick from some kind of environmental toxin. My vision for regenerative AI is it has what I call a transparency engine, and that's basically making transparent. It's like turning the mechanisms for surveillance that are operated by the deep state, by intelligence agencies, et cetera, that are expanding in their power and capacity, turning that onto the environment, and also onto industry, so that we know exactly who is producing the forever chemicals that are destroying people's lives and ripping at the fabric of the natural world and destroying it.
All
So
right.
if we can make an AI that reveals that and allows you to actually see transparently through the entire supply chain, um, and identifies these most damaging um, chemicals, well, we go a long way to reversing the collapse of life support on planet Earth. And
Yeah.
I think that's another level. But to fund that, my vision with Daniel Swid, who's one of the early consultants with the Regen Network, which is a blockchain that works with ecosystem credits, eco credits and carbon, was to go to individual blockchains and sell them on the big vision that unless we turn this around, unless we turn the standard operating procedure, the status quo economic system on its head, we have to flip it. So instead of rewarding more and more efficient extraction, exploitation, without regard to the long-term costs and what it does to the foundational source of all wealth, which is nature, then we're going to be bankrupting the world, and we're in deep trouble. So we need to flip that and have it have for every transaction. The vision is this: for every transaction that happens on your blockchain, there is a small fee. It's like 1% for the planet, which is a charity that directs money. Companies can, any mom and pop shop or company can commit to committing 1% for the planet. I know that HyperCycle takes 5% for just operations. Why not seed this with a small fraction of every transaction that goes to building, establishing a set of first principles that guide a regenerative AI or regenerative operating system or some kind of amalgam of the two, and thereby guarantee the its operation, its creation, its building, and its maintenance and operation. That was the vision that Daniel Swid and I had. It could be brought to any blockchain. It could be brought to HyperCycle, brought to the internet, computer, blockchain network. So that was the vision in a nutshell. So yeah, I think it would be worthwhile if out of this conversation, this ongoing conversation, we could, some of us could perhaps develop a presentation and a pitch and present it to Sentient to add this layer, add some of these ideas. Here's a menu of some options that we could help you build, or this is we can help you make you can run your system on HyperCycle. Cycle. It can be hosted, and we can make the case for that. We can and start building basically the open source systems that we need, so it's put back into our hands instead of the boardrooms of these 7 big AI companies. We don't know what they're doing. They're black boxes. They're making decisions that are they're creating a massive bubble, at huge risk to all of us, and they're sucking all the investment money and sucking all the air in the room, and leaving us gasping. Just and so we need to challenge them, but we need to have a practical roadmap to get there. And I think you're touching on a few of those things in this approach to sentient, which again is just they're trailblazers on the open source front. Okay, 100 members. The benchmark that you can see on their website, is very impressive. The benchmarks, let me just pull it up again. Hang on a second. Pretty impressive. This is something called SEAL-O. It's the Sentient hits 45.6 on SEAL-O SEAL QA, more than doubling GP4s and Gemini Pro on complex multi-source reasoning. So this is a benchmark I'm not familiar with. I'm not a techie, obviously. But Roma and their search scored 45.6, Open Deep Search 8.9. Gemini 2.5 Pro 19.8, Perplexity, which I've used a little bit, is 31.5. So it actually surpasses every other large language model chat service that's available right now. And again, it's a testimony to the power of open source. And there's a guy from Europe who went to Harvard who is building an open source AI repository or service for healthcare practitioners in Europe, and he's high level. He's getting invitations to speak at major conferences, and he's getting traction. And he made this commitment to open source AI, and that is the way we're going to rebuild trust. That and structures like the DAO that Mauricio mentioned earlier. I know he's created one. He's hands-on with the DAO now. I think Robin's part of it. So anyway, I'm rambling a bit, but I think I think this example of looking at sentient AI and what they've done as an example of the power of open source should give us hope and cause to actually get working on this, practically speaking. And so our hope is that we might attract others and put together, a team that can put together a cogent, coherent presentation for the likes of a Sentient or any builders to build AI and make it part of hyperscale and learn from Sentient and incorporate it into your architecture at hyperscale. I understand that, Robin, you're actually been tasked with creating a marketplace for AIs.
I don't know if you can hear me okay. My sound is bad, but give me a thumbs up if my voice is okay.
I hear you.
Okay, good. No, we're trying to build a marketplace because right now there's no place that a normal person can go and access these great decentralized AIs. But I did want to comment, Carl, that HyperCycle only actually takes 1% of the node fees. But I know we've talked about that idea of giving a percentage back. But I think there's the way we could do that is because like HyperCycle is not going to do that. They're very hands off on what we're allowed to do. But we could say, if you want to run these on the nodes, because each node runner has the choice of what they want to do, then we
you give the option to them. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah, you give them the option to. Yeah, it's voluntary. You click a box and boom, 5%, 10% of what your node generates goes to supporting whatever this is that we build or whatever we call it, this regenerative AI, this regenerative operating system. Okay, that's great.
There was a question that I brought up to Ray earlier that you should know about because I actually thought that the operating system, maybe I'm living in the future, I thought it was live, but so there's sort of a couple of different ways, or probably more, that Ray knows that we could think about it. So for example, some of the people on HyperCycle have software that each node runner who wants to run it will download to their nodes, and that could be the operating system where you opt in and it has the structure, the ethics all coded in, that every AI model, which we call an AIM, can run, or the other way to do it would just to be incorporated into each individual AI module. So that's something to talk about in the future on the way to set it up. But either way, but if it would be easy if it was the node runner said, hey, do you want to run this? You're going to download this software. Maybe the software is free, but we're asking for, even give them a range, you know, a percentage range. Please contribute back to the network.
Yeah, I can say a few things there. So correct with 1%. It's only going to be 5% if you ask HyperPG to do it to run the compute for you, right? So that 5% is what HyperPG will take for operating those nodes for you and providing the hardware resources. But otherwise, if you're in the stack, it's 1%. The other way, to look at this is let's use Sentient Foundations network as an example. Okay, when you pass a query into that whole interesting open source AGI framework that they've developed and that they're running there, that is passing through all these algos and pattern recognition and the whole 9 yards before it comes back to you with what the outcome of the query is. What I can see happening with this regenerative group that's building here within the space that we're talking in here is, imagine that there is now a cognitive unit that becomes part of that network that is prioritizing number one regenerative principles, ideas, and anything that has to do with that topic. So when that query happens, it is actually accessed by the network. You have a whole unit of nodes that's responsible for looking at the whole regenerative aspect and the principles of that, and how all those queries are going to relate to that in terms of its pattern recognition, the algos associated with it, and how it responds to your query. So the idea is to actually build a regenerative model or a cluster of models and nodes that are running that become part of the response vector of that query. See what I'm saying? Right. What you're endeavoring to do is actually inject a whole cognitive unit within this AGI brain that these guys are trying to build that becomes part of the response query. And that has all of its sensors and all of its tasks within its own models and nodes, completely prioritizing how does this play into equilibrium for the environment? How is this sustainable? How is this good for all of the principles that we care about? So the way that this starts is right here in the space. You start to ideate, and then you start to go into what are the aspects of these cognitive units which are driven by AI models that need to be codified. So now you're in engineering, and then you pass that into a development team that codifies it, and now you have it running, right? But we have to get all these ideas and principles codified. We have to translate this whole conversation into code. That's what the biggest work would be here.
Yeah,
And
first you got to get agreement on like pulling from David's Mother Earth Constitution, pulling from the work of Carol Sanford, who I quoted earlier about on regenerative economics, pulling from the work of, for example, the eight forms of capital and principles of regenerative economies, John Fullerton's work for the Capital Institute, pulling
Mhm.
from, there's a large body of work and a diverse body of work across a broad spectrum that I've identified in the last few years that could inform a process, a collaborative process where we bring them together and see what rises to the top. Like what makes the most sense. Pulling together. It's got to be inclusive. It's got to be transparent. Maybe it's done through a DAO. We could do a first draft, ad hoc, basis that merges out of this group. But that's the vision I have is always got to begin with first principles, and then as you say, that has to be translated into code, and then it has to be placed in the architecture, the system architecture of wherever we want this to be applied and be active, whether
Yep.
that's a proposal to Sentient or whether it's woven into hyperscale, it's woven into battery coin, which, well, David's already has his sort of constitution there. It's very clear.
Right.
Okay, well, let's see. We're up on an hour. Are we able to go beyond the hour if we want to, or are we cut off? I haven't done these in a while.
Well, I think Ed's had his
Let's.
hand up for a while.
Yeah, I was
Ed,
just going to say I've been on many calls during the Kennedy campaign with Ed, and he's always got some great wisdom to share. Being I believe a farmer, right, Ed?
Yeah, I've worked in regenerative ag for decades and with a lot of the farmer-driven regenerative, and I thought I'd just share quickly a few of the technologies that we have now developed.
Sure, great, thank you.
We have our first AI custom through Advancing Eco Ag, which was a farmer-driven company. It's called Field Lark, and an excellent AI. It's called
What's it called, Ed? Again?
Field Lark.
Field Lark. Uh-huh.
And you can look it up, and it's free to use, limited amount for free, but it's excellent. It's taking data from millions of acres of regenerative farms and many of the things that like chat or Grok don't have access to, which are important podcasts, YouTube videos with farmers and scientists talking about regenerative ag and what they're working on. So excellent product. Another thing that's technology that we've got is we're into food is medicine, food is health. And so it's farmer driven by another group called the Bionutrient Food Association, which again was started by a farmer.
I know those guys. Yeah. What's the founder's name? What's his name again?
Dan Kitteridge.
Dan, yeah. I worked with Dan for a little while.
Yeah,
Way back.
what they did is first they analyzed what is nutrient density. So they took just about every crop that was grown on a farm, had samples sent in from farms, from farmers markets, from even supermarkets, gardens, soil samples, all the data that they could provide, and looked at the variation. We were told by academia for years that no matter how you grew it, carrots might be 20% different in nutrient. We found it's many times. And so they also, in their work, had to realize that if we're going to make this useful at like the consumer level, they also needed to create technology and a meter to be able to measure it. So they have that meter developed. It can eventually go into a smartphone, but it can be a simple handheld meter. And so what they do is they figure out let's use carrots as an example. They find out the variation within carrots of nutrient density and spectrum. And then they identify something that's common in that variation. And so you literally, a market or a consumer could go in and you got 3 choices of carrots, and it isn't going to tell you everything about what's in that carrot, but it's going to tell you the variation in the percentile. So what we've determined is, looking across the board with what's produced on a farm, over 90% of it that we have access to is within the 10th to 25th percentile of what it could and should be. And so you'll literally be able to go in a market, or the market could do it and shine light on it. And one will say 20, the other will say 40, the other will say 60. So you'll be able to know what your nutrition level is of that produce.
That's extraordinary. That's extraordinary. Let me just say to everyone here, it's been my intuition, because I've been following regenerative agriculture for a while. My brother's an organic grower in Rhode Island, and I had a hand in starting a local food hub there with like 15 partner farms, et cetera, et cetera. And so I understand that that's sort of like, it's something that brings people together. Food is culture. And I thought that a regenerative agriculture AI is, and building on maybe what you've done, or inviting you to host on HyperScale. If you want to make some introductions to those who built FieldLark, that's an option. Or we could build on what you've done. I don't know, but it seemed to me that was sort of the low-hanging fruit, if you will, in the AI world, because everyone eats, and because of the crisis in agriculture now, we could accelerate the transition from chemically intensive glyphosate adding industrial farming to regenerative farming. And it's a movement that's, Ed, is really growing very fast. I mean, I don't necessarily trust all the players. I know that Pepsi, for example, has put a lot of money into regenerative agriculture. I'll admit that, I'm somewhat torn, but someone made a DiGiorno pizza. Maybe you'll appreciate this and maybe have some insights. I think you'll like the story. So I was working on a boat, and my crew bought a DiGiorno pizza. I hadn't had frozen pizza in years. I live in Costa Rica, and we just don't buy frozen pizza. And I turned the package over. The entire back side of the pizza box was all about regenerative agriculture. So apparently Nestle has contracted with growers that allegedly, presumably, are using regenerative practices on their farms. And I have to say, it was the best frozen pizza I've ever had. And so this is Nestle, who has done, the Nestle I know is buying up water, and privatizing water, bottling water and privatizing water over the planet. The Nestle I know was responsible for, baby formula problems, I think, in South America with tainted baby formula. So it's a company that has a very checkered history, but here they are producing pizza with wheat grown by regenerative farmers. So interesting anecdote for you, Ed.
Yeah, I mean, Gabe Brown, who's one of the guys, if anybody ever watched the movie documentary Kiss the Ground or Common Ground, he's one of our pioneers in the movement, and he started this group called Understanding Ag, which is, farmer consultants to other farmers. And most of his interests now have been from these big corporations, because what they realized is that the industrial food system isn't very sustainable. The degradation of our soil, the degradation of our topsoil, all the chemicals and everything, they're worried about their future being able to find product, and being concerned, if this trend of regenerative agriculture, which is going to happen, it is happening across millions of acres now, they got to get on board. So we look at, even something like McDonald's. I mean, fast food or a McDonald's menu isn't inherently all that, wrong. It's just what they're using for base ingredients. We talk about, if you take a burger, and if the burger is grass fed, and nutritious and doesn't have all the omega-6 fats in it that a feedlot does, it's healthy. A burger, the bun could be of regenerative grains without all the chemicals. The lettuce, the pickle, the tomato, the cheese, if it was all real, it could be good. If even the French fries, which is starting to happen now, is cooked in beef tallow instead of those seed oils that, again, are high in omega-6, which is, really inflammatory. We can do, we don't have, because people are afraid that if we go in some direction, they're going to have to eat raw vegetables or something. And it's like, no, certain things like, soda and the sugary added to everything, that needs to change. And I think that will change too. But they're very interested in that future for two reasons: sustainability. In fact, Gabe said he went to General Mills, their corporate office. He's walking up the pathway, and they've got cover crops identified on the sidewalk. He opens up the main door into it, and straight ahead on the wall is regenerative agriculture is the future. So,
Wow.
and we got Walmart interested. We want to decentralize the food system. We want local food. We need infrastructure for those, processing, distribution, storage for all that. But we realize that some of these big food companies, if they can at least transition to producing healthier stuff, then it'll be, that's a step in the positive direction.
Absolutely, and perhaps even some funding for like taking Fieldlark AI to the next level, or building even something more advanced that accelerates the adoption of regenerative agriculture principles. And for that matter, tracking the impacts of the chemicals that are used, and what happens when the rains come and you don't have erosion control on a non-regenerative farm, and that ends up in the streams and people drinking that water. It ends up down on the coast, and you have coral impacts on coral. You have algae blooms. So we can start to sort of close the circle and understand the impacts of what is done upstream in these valleys where food is being grown in an industrial way, and they're applying glyphosate, and they're putting all these chemicals, pesticides, and so on, and then that's having an impact downstream, and then we
Yeah, and
close the circle. Yeah.
that's hurting farmers because of all these input costs. And so we have regenerative farmers with thousands of acres. Rick Clark in Indiana is a great example. He's got 7,000 acres. He raises about 10 different crops. He doesn't use any synthetic nitrogen, doesn't do any tillage, doesn't use any herbicides, doesn't need any pesticides, he's producing his own epigenetic advanced seeds, so he doesn't have to use the GMOs or anything like that. So, and that's what really, when we get these heavy rains and droughts and pest attacks and everything, that's when other farmers realize that lunatic, crazy farmer that's been doing everything different, and all of a sudden his crops are still green, or his fields aren't flooded, or he's not getting attacked. And that's when they all of a sudden want to, come over and have a beer or meet at the coffee shop. And so that's what's really driving the transition, because Rick
Extraordinary. Yeah,
Clark, if you think
extraordinary.
about it, he's got 7,000 acres and he's saving well over $500 an acre. That's serious cash. Our idea is we don't need to fight these chemical companies. We just got to beat them. So he was spending over $1.7 million a year to these companies. Now he's giving them nothing. So
Wow.
and
Yeah, that's regenerative economics right there. You
exactly.
just gave us a beautiful example of what regenerative economics through the eye of a farmer in the agriculture industry. And I think frankly that's where we're going to see maybe the biggest impact is first a sort of a breakthrough app that gets widely adopted, and it's also about tying it in with other AIs, with other agents that are maybe gathering data from the oceans, downstream, and so that the people who are artisan fishermen along the coast who've seen stocks of the fish that they count on for a livelihood slowly just disappearing. It's reducing and reducing and reducing. The corals are dying off. They can plug in and see, oh, okay, so I need to support the farmers who are up the river, a few, like a valley in the center part of the country, whatever. I live in Costa Rica, and so there's this valley, and the water comes pure out of the mountain, but then it flows through this valley where industrial agriculture is happening on a pretty grand scale. And even if it's some small scale farmers, they're still using a high level of inputs, and that gets washed down, and it's having an impact on that artisan fisherman who used to be able to go out and spend 2 days on the water and provide for his extended family. Now is having to spend 6, and he's not even, he's not making what he did. He's not getting by. So it's like closing that loop again and having sort of many AIs that actually communicate with each other and share insights. And I mean, that's the dream. Getting there is like a million small steps.
Oh yeah,
And
we've got a county in Iowa where, due to a couple farmers really promoting it, it's a large area of regenerative, and they're brooks and streams that eventually go into the Mississippi that dump into the dead zone. Their waters are running clean now. And
wow.
so, all we have to do is stop putting this into the water system, and all of a sudden, all these dead zones and coral reefs automatically start healing. So,
Right, and you just touched. That's a story that needs to be told, so that all the other farmers whose farms are near streams that feed into the Mississippi, they see that story and they go, "Wow, okay, that moves them. It moves the needle. It inspires action, inspires change." And I know from a recent application that interview process that I just had with a company, that they actually using AI to help them with their narrative, creating videos with their customers that tell a story that builds the brand. In our case, the brand is regenerative agriculture, as you're speaking to, and we're telling that story of those farmers in Iowa and how what they're doing on their farm in Iowa is impacting and contributing to a dead zone that's destroying the Gulf of America.
Yeah, one of the other areas I focus on a lot now is with doctors because their
Right.
life is hell now. All they can't even think about wellness or health. They got kids coming in, adults coming in with all these diseases that are, one pill, one shot after another. And, people don't want to be kids don't even want to be doctors anymore because it's just a nightmare. And so when we tell them that, food is the solution, and they could actually use that as medicine instead of, because we can measure that nutrient density and they can understand true nutrition and the gut biome, it's connected to the soil biome, and all of a sudden they get excited about it. And the other area that I've been working is with athletes, because
Right.
athletes
Right.
as a profession, they're worth millions of dollars, and
Yeah,
yet
it's
they're
big,
breaking
big.
down because of inflammation from the foods they're eating. And the last thing an athlete needs is increased inflammation.
Right.
So
Well, what you're bringing up and all the things you're touching on bring to mind this. My understanding of the problem is that these areas are kind of siloed. So, so there's there's this guy in Europe that's working on that open source um, program to support healers and medical practitioners and doctors and nurses and such, and getting access to data and opening that up. Same thing needs to happen on the regeneration front. And what you're talking about is like, wait, we need to break down those silos and build the bridges between those domains, and AIs can be part of that. AIs can be part of that. It's large language models or small language models will have their place. Obviously, what you built or what your colleagues built uh, for regenerative agriculture, that's they've learned on data, as you mentioned, that they've pulled from your community, the regenerative community. So it's still a large language model. Active inference, which maybe Robin can speak to, active inference is another approach. It actually creates a model, and that it interacts with its world. It updates its world model. It updates its understanding of the world. It tries to predict what's going to happen and reduce uncertainty. And it actually is a viable path to AGI, whereas large language models are not, because of their very nature. It's not going to lead to AGI. So the next wave will be likely based on how the brain actually works. Active inference is inspired by, how the brain actually works. So, anyway, Ed, did you want to say anything else that might be
beyond
germane?
that, we're working with like Sabine Hazan and that kind of thing that are understanding the gut biome. And so really connecting that from the soil biome to the gut biome, which is really
Right.
important, because the number one factor we found with producing nutrient dense food, when we looked at everything, it wasn't seed variety, it wasn't where you lived, it wasn't, number one factor was the health of the soil biome, and that's what we've destroyed without understanding its importance. So, and we're now able to create plants that are so healthy. They're not attacked by soil pathogens or insects or anything. They're just incredibly healthy, and their longevity is long. And then we start feeding those same plants to our livestock, and all of a sudden they're really healthy. And in the metabolomics work, to understand that, all the phytochemicals, all the phytonutrients that build our resistance, all the vitamins, minerals, we increase that. And that's why we're really we know that we can create healthy people. And what's the number one problem we're debating around right now? It's the cost of healthcare. And it's not healthcare, it's sick care. So
it's sick care, and we're probably the afflicted with a higher level of chronic disease in this country than any. So this is definitely a path. It's definitely it's a big picture solution you're talking about. And regenerative AI is something that can tackle that kind of thing on a level that you and I on our own, we can contribute a part or piece. But once you bring all this collective wisdom, this experience, these technologies together, we'll turn things around in a decade. It's just a matter of getting the resources, being persistent, persevering, not giving up, taking the steps. So, Robin, do you want to jump in, or Mauricio as co-host to ask Ed any questions, or sort of bring it back to where we started?
I think that it's beautiful on how the conversation started and where we are getting at. And I think that it's very valuable on what you were mentioning and the vision that at least myself, Mauricio started this, and it was always to really have our own economy and really change it, but change it for good and with good values. And regenerative AI, that's where it comes. And you were mentioning about the silos, and that's where HyperCycle comes in. It breaks those silos and it helps this AI to have their playground so that they can connect with each other and give solutions faster to more problems. So amazing talk. And as you mentioned, it's about making proof of work. And now that all this data it's out there, well, let's find out, as Raymond says, well, okay, how do we code this? How do we amify this? And how do we start like looking either if we are going to need to be running this on the HyperCycle Ethereum node factories, or do we do this on the Anfis, and start gathering more data and see how this AI evolve and interact over time. So great conversation, Kyle. And also thank you for bringing this this insight about the in the agriculture economy, how this affects and how can we start building new solutions for these economies.
Is there anyone who's been listening in who'd like to ask a question of Ed or Mauricio or Robin or myself or David or Ray? We're coming up on an hour and a half.
I was just going to give my last comment that I just have really enjoyed this space. And Ed, it was so nice to. I don't talk to very many farmers in what I do, and it's really the most important thing is what, well, besides the environment, is what we put in our bodies. And so I've just really appreciated this, and I look forward to everything we're going to do and all the rest of our calls.
Well, I do too, and thank you, Robin, for being the catalyst. I've been meaning to start hosting on X again. I did a series on regenerative AI several years ago, and it's great to be back. I see, Greg, that you're on the space with us. Would you like to introduce yourself and what you're working on, or should we look to maybe have you on as a special guest the next time around, maybe next Wednesday or any Wednesday? Greg started Regen AI, so he's on his own. He had this similar vision. We crossed paths, we talked, and he's building a network. He's tracking with all of the stuff that's going on, and I'm just interested in his insights and what he's been able to what he sees. So, Greg, you want to say a few words, introduce us to your work and what you're up to?
Sure. I'll just be really brief because I'm